Thank you very much for joining the JFOODO Japanese Green Tea Workshop today. My name is Zach Mangan and I will be your instructor. This workshop is part of JFOODO's promotional efforts to deepen understanding of the exceptional quality of Japanese tea leaves in the US and to further grow the community of Japanese tea fans. In recent years, while the demand for matcha has continued to grow, hojicha and other types of Japanese tea have also been gaining popularity. Following the first workshop that we held in Los Angeles a few weeks ago, we are pleased to host the second session, which will focus primarily on hojicha. Our hope is to introduce practical tea habits that you can begin incorporating into your life as early as tomorrow through both a learning session and hands-on activities so that you can experience the depth and richness of the world of Japanese tea. We also have participants today who work in the Japanese tea industry or run restaurants or shops. With that in mind, we'd also like to include insights that may be helpful from a business perspective as well. This workshop is also being streamed live on Instagram. We hope our online participants will enjoy the experience together with us as well. Now, let me briefly introduce myself. All right, that's the written part. So thank you all for being here. My name is Zach Mangan. I'm the founder of Kettl. We are a Japanese tea company based between New York City, Los Angeles, and Fukuoka, Japan. It has been my great pleasure over the last decade and a half to discover the world of Japanese tea, and something that has stayed true over those 15 years is how unique it is. Even staying in one country of origin, the tea plant itself is remarkable, and it's my passion to share, what I love about tea. But also, today is going to be really interesting because I have some friends of mine that came along to kind of share their world and their viewpoint on Japanese tea. So I hope you guys are excited. It's going to be a lot of tasting, so take it easy on the tea. We're going to taste a lot, so sip slowly. And I'm really excited to share this beautiful world of Japanese tea. And I also want to start by thanking JFOODO and their team for having me to do this presentation. So thank you so much. And with that, I think we'll get started. Japanese tea. When we talk about Japanese tea, that's like saying French wine. It could mean different things to different people. So Japan is unique in that it produces primarily green tea. So it's a country that produces green tea, and people often ask me, why does Japan mostly produce green tea? Because it's consumed by the local population, Japanese people, and the tea is predominantly made for the domestic market. So people drink green tea, so green tea is made. So when we talk about green tea, there's many different categories. So we have, let me see, a show of hands. How many people here have heard of matcha? Right. So matcha is now maybe the most widely known tea in the planet, and it happens to be a green tea from Japan. But hopefully after today, you'll understand that there are other styles of tea, including sencha, gyokuro, and what we're going to talk about today, hojicha. So, not to get long-winded, but what I'd like you to think about when you think about Japanese tea is a couple of points. Number one, that the tea is harvested in the spring and it's steamed. So the steaming process is what makes Japanese tea very unique among all among all tea in the world. So that steaming process brings out this very green, very fresh flavor, and that'll even show up in the hojicha that we're going to talk about. So again, regionally, Japan is very diverse. You can find tea from north of Tokyo all the way down to the south in Kyushu. So today we're going to be focusing on one of my favorite styles of tea, and I'm going to ask for another show of hands. How many people here have heard of hojicha? Oh, great. Maybe we don't need to do this. Everyone already knows it. All right. So hojicha. So what makes hojicha unique? And I'm going to show you. Can everyone see this here? Remember I just said all the tea in Japan is green, and now I'm showing you this? Question. Anyone know why this tea does not look green? It's roasted, exactly. So that roasting process is what makes hojicha unique. Now, this is still classified as a green tea, and the reason why is the processing before it gets roasted is green tea processing. So you have the steaming process, you have all of the processes within the factory, so rolling and drying, and when they're finished with that, you have green tea. And that green tea goes into a roaster, and after the roasting process, becomes this kind of, it can be darker here, darker brown to this kind of light golden color. So when we talk about hojicha, we're talking about a green tea that's roasted. It can be roasted at high temperatures, it can be roasted at medium temperatures, and it's, I know some of you work in the coffee industry, and it's very similar to coffee beans in that sense. Depending on where the product comes from and the regional style of roasting, you can find teas that are very deeply roasted. You can find teas that almost still look green. They're very lightly roasted. And that's the pleasure of Japanese hojicha, is it's a style of tea that's very diverse, even within one category. And it's also a tea that shows up in almost every area of production in Japan. For example, we talked about matcha earlier. Matcha is only really produced in a select few areas of Japan, but what's great about hojicha, you can go almost anywhere and they produce it. So if you like to experiment, you like to travel, you like to go and find unique teas, hojicha is a great one because there's so much of it to try. It was developed likely in Kyoto in the 1920s. If you start to study about Japanese tea, Kyoto is this foundational area where a lot of things, including sencha and matcha production, where kind of the origins exist. And it's the same with hojicha. Low caffeine, warm, nutty flavor. So it's a tea, I say a tea of hospitality. In Japan and also other areas, oftentimes when you go to a hotel or you go to a restaurant, you're served this tea. Like today, right? You came in out of the cold, we wanted to give you something nice and hot. So it's a very gentle tea, and we're going to talk a lot today about its pairing capabilities too. So it's a tea that's very food friendly. Traditionally, it's made from bancha or stems. So I'm going to use some terminology today that I want to talk about in the beginning. Bancha generally refers to teas from the later part of the harvest. So we have in Japan, as I mentioned, the spring, that's called ichibancha, that's the first harvest, nibancha, sanbancha, and so on. Oftentimes, the tea from the later harvests, which sells for less, in the marketplace, it has a lower value economically, can be roasted into a really fragrant tea like hojicha. So nowadays, though, we're seeing roasted teas from the early harvest as well. So we're going to talk about the difference of that later on. So why roast the tea? So one of the points I just made, you can turn tea that might on its own feel flat or uninteresting, you can enhance it by roasting. And I know, again, for those that work in coffee or work in kitchens, that Maillard effect. So when you roast and you caramelize sugars, you get this really interesting spectrum of flavor and aroma. And hojicha has that. It has a lot of kind of caramelized notes of sometimes toffee, spun sugar, nutty qualities that are, naturally, I think, appreciated by folks all over the world, not just in Asia, but in New York especially. So it transforms amino acids and sugars, and it makes the tea more digestible and calming. So when I say digestible and calming, you actually limit some of the caffeine, because caffeine is water soluble, which is really interesting. So as you heat the tea leaves, the caffeine actually starts to evaporate out of the leaf, and you're left with less that's in the tea itself. Also, the catechin content, which sometimes upsets people's stomachs. If you've ever had an experience where you've had Japanese tea and you feel like if you maybe didn't eat enough or you just have a sensitive stomach, it maybe made you feel a little unwell, roasting the tea lowers the amount of catechins. So people find who have maybe a slightly more sensitive disposition that hojicha is something they'll enjoy drinking. All right. So classic leaf style. So classic, can you see, it may be hard to see from where you are in the back, but I have a classic hojicha here, which is made primarily from leaf, and then something called kukicha or bocha, which is made from stem. So when we talk about the more classic style, we're talking about leaf hojicha that's roasted for a longer period of time, so a deeper roasted. This particular one comes from the area of Uji in Kyoto, and it's a very classic roast. And you guys are actually going to get a chance to try this particular tea in our very next pairing here, where we try some desserts and we have some cold brew with it. Compare that to this hojicha. This is made from looks like a younger leaf, or excuse me, a younger stem, so from earlier in the harvest, and you have the stem of the tea plant. Now the stem is really interesting because the stem serves as basically the highway for nutrients to move in the tea plant. So oftentimes we talk about the leaf being where the nutrients end up, but the area where all these nutrients move through are the stems. So the stems have a very specific taste, a very specific profile, and very aromatic. So it's become more common now to find teas like this roasted. So this is definitely more of a classic style. This is more of kind of a contemporary style. And then we're also going to talk about powdered hojicha as well, which we'll get to a little later on in the presentation. If you've ever had a hojicha latte, likely coming from the powder. One other thing I want to talk about is the idea of mottainai. Mottainai means not to waste anything. So what's really interesting about the Japanese tea production process is that when you start with a product, you want to try and use the entirety of that tea plant over the course of your manufacturing. So that's like when you were cooking with vegetables and you find ways to use the ends to make stock or to create something so that you're not wasting anything. That concept in Japan is very important in tea production. So hojicha becomes, oftentimes when you're processing higher quality senchas, you'll have these stems left over. And rather than just discard them and say, okay, well, we've made our sencha, that's all we need, you can take these stems and you can roast them. So that's really something important when you think about hojicha, this mottainai culture. All right, so bocha, as we said, that's lower in caffeine, sweet, woody, clean finish. Actually, if you tried that hojicha when you came in, the hot hojicha we served was actually slightly different than this one, but it was a kukicha version, so very bright. All right, so the modern idea of hojicha is this idea of using more quality products that come from the first harvest. So we see a higher quality leaf and stem base, lighter, more controlled roasting. Again, like in coffee, if you want to express the character of the coffee bean, maybe super deep roasting might not, give you that much information about what the bean had to say before it was roasted. So it's the same with tea. You can kind of look at it two different ways. You can get this deeper roast, which is going to be like a very enriched flavor, kind of nostalgic aroma, versus something that's a lighter roast that will have more of the inherent quality of the tea. So some of the contemporary uses for hojicha, and this may be something you're familiar with, obviously specialty cafes and fine dining, hojicha lattes and desserts. We have cold brew and single origin expressions, as well as sort of this bridge between tradition and innovation. And it's always been my idea that using quality products across the spectrum, that means from brewing tea maybe very traditionally to making a latte, using quality and using the proper brewing parameters, I think, is really important. And that means if you're going to make a latte, make a great latte. If you're going to make brewed tea or iced tea, do the best you can to really bring out the quality of the inherent, flavors in the tea. And that's what we're going to talk about today, and what was some of the tips I'm going to show you for brewing the tea. So this leads me to maybe one of my favorite parts of today, because there's dessert involved. I want to take hojicha out of the context of just this is a product, this is a tea that you drink, and talk a little bit about how the worlds can combine with hospitality, fine dining, cafes, and dessert. So I want to invite to the stage a good friend of mine and someone I've been lucky enough to work with for many, many years, Jiang Considine, who's the executive pastry chef at Jean-Georges. Sean. And we've been very, very lucky. Chef Sean has put together 3 unique desserts today that we're going to get a chance to try. And guess what? They all have hojicha in them. So I just want to get started by maybe, Sean, you could tell us a little bit about your backstory and how you got started in pastry.
Well, I worked with Jean-Georges since 2008. I worked in Mexico for 10 years at the one and only Palmilla. And then Jean-Georges said, do you want to come to New York? And he brought me and my family to New York. So I've been here for 13 years, worked at Jean-Georges restaurant. I'm the corporate pastry chef too, so he's got 65 restaurants around the world, and I do all the recipe development for desserts for all these restaurants, come up with new ideas seasonally, and then implement them. We travel around to all the places. There's restaurants, Kyoto and Tokyo, Shanghai, Paris. They're all around the world. So we do lots of different things and try to implement seasonal desserts in all the restaurants.
That sounds like a dream job. Wonderful. Well, I'm excited because today we get to talk about hojicha and desserts. So how, like, historically, when you were starting out, did you see tea as something that was always a part of pastry? Was it an ingredient that you saw when you were working in your early times at Jean-Georges, or is that something you've seen kind of more common recently?
There were definitely recipes that I inherited from the pastry chef before me at Jean-Georges that he used matcha a lot. So matcha ice cream and matcha, different types of matcha cakes. That's why I made this little hojicha opera cake. It actually came from the matcha opera cake that I have. I just substituted directly the hojicha powder instead of matcha powder.
Oh, wow. Okay. So was this, in terms of, like, you've worked with tea before, so you've worked with matcha, you've had that on the menu, but in terms of hojicha, was this kind of the first time that you had an experience trying it with sweets?
Yeah, this is my first time working with hojicha. So.
Wow. When I tasted this didn't taste like it was the first time you used it, which is good.
Yeah, it worked out very well, I thought.
What were your impressions, like, when you were workshopping it? Did you find it easy to use? Did you have some false starts? Or there anything, like, you went down a road, or you kind of landed on these first try and it worked?
Yeah, I usually use lots of fruit in desserts. I do, like, seasonality, fruit forward, and lots of times I have, like, highly acidic things. I like to, end the meal with something that's a little tart. But I felt like it was too much. You couldn't do acidity. You couldn't have a high acidity level with the tea. So I tried to go with focusing on, like, the caramels, nut pralines. I did, like, a roasted banana. So I did lots of, like, smooth, mellow flavors, so the roasted tea could really come out. Mm-hmm. And with the color, right? It was such a pretty color, the tea itself. It's such a caramel color, right? Mm. So you got to kind of play off of that. You guys can try to.
Maybe you could walk us through each one of your.
Yeah, so the heart is. I would start with that one. It's definitely, like, the darkest one. I did a burnt caramel with, there's a little piece of marzipan in there, and the hojicha caramel with amaretto on the inside of the chocolate, and it's 70% chocolate.
Nice.
And then I would move to the banana tart. It's a hazelnut banana tart. I made a hojicha caramel also with roasted banana inside of it, and then I did a vanilla cream on top, and then spray painted it with chocolate so it gives a little velvety look.
It's interesting how the chocolate and the hojicha, color-wise, visually too, they're seamless. Like, you get cacao look even from the layers of the hojicha from here and the powder. So it's kind of a fun and almost, it's like it tricks you a little bit into thinking, oh, that might be chocolate, but when you bite it, you get this really, like, aromatic tea flavor.
Yeah.
I loved the banana too. I thought that was such a great idea to, like, the way peanut butter and banana goes really well together. Yeah. Hojicha has that kind of roast quality that I felt like it really, I'd never thought of that. Banana is a great choice.
That's great. Thank you very much. And then the last one is a hojicha opera cake. So I did layers of hojicha jacquard, a mousseline, and a hazelnut, lutein, praline. It's like a crunchy, nutty layer. So I put the hojicha powder inside of buttercream and mixed it with pastry cream, and that's kind of the creamy layers of it. I thought the cake came out, it was like a really nice light color.
Yeah, it looks great. For anyone who might work professionally in a sweet setting, do you have any, things that you learned working with it, like with sifting it? Did you sift the powder, or were you able to use it directly without any clumps?
No, the powder, it dissolved in there.
Immediately? Right. Okay.
Yeah, it was fine. I mean, I did make sure, like, the liquid was thick before I whisked it in there, but it dissolved beautifully. And I didn't need to strain it.
Yeah, I think working with hojicha, you can go two ways, right? Some people like to take the leaf and infuse it into things like milk or to create a base. We'll talk about that actually with another dessert later. But what's great about hojicha powder for applications like culinary applications is it's an ingredient like flour that can go right into you can put it right into the batter that you're working with and infuses quite easily. So I think that's something that since they've come up with the idea of pulverizing it like matcha, it's become unlocked a bunch of new ways that you can work with it more easily. Mm-hmm. Nice. And just to let you know, with the pairing we have here, it's called mizudashi. Mizudashi is brewing the tea leaves with cold water. So I started this yesterday. I put tea leaves in with cold water and let them brew for about 24 hours. And this is great for people who work in restaurants and want to bring kind of a different, experience for your guests through tea. Cold brewing is wonderful because you can serve it in stemware, you can serve it in a wine glass, you could serve it in something like this over a rock, and it really brings out like a new dimension in the flavor. And also temperature is fun to play with. Not people have had iced tea before, but brewing Japanese tea, specifically hojicha, you get that kind of sweet caramelized note, and then some of the aromatics, I think they change when they're brewed in cold water. So that's super easy, and also great if you're working, in a cafe, you can batch it before and have it on hand. So yeah, please go ahead and if you haven't, try your desserts, and we'd love to hear your guys' feedback. And also, if anyone has any questions for Sean or myself in this part of the presentation, you have the maestro here, so now's the time to ask.
Hey. So yeah, all the hojicha flavors were great, came through really nicely. You said the first one was a little bit darker. Did you do anything to the hojicha powder beforehand to give it a darkness, or was it just more the other flavors that you paired it with in the dessert that made a darker, quote unquote, flavor profile?
Just with the pairing. So I burnt the caramel a little more and then went with a darker chocolate to try to kind of bring the bitterness out of it.
Awesome, thank you.
Thanks. And I put the marzipan in there to kind of have it a little smooth. Yeah. Great.
No one's asking questions because everyone's eating. Okay, we have a couple of online questions. Where can I buy good quality hojicha? That's a great question. So now more than ever, you can find more quality Japanese tea online and even in stores. A couple things I'd look for when looking for hojicha is more specific they can be about where it came from. So not just saying hojicha, no origin. Japan, hopefully some prefecture, could be Shizuoka or Kagoshima or any prefecture in Japan. So I would start with a cursory look online, and the more specific the regional attributes they tell you about, the better. And also it's important to remember hojicha is not like a wildly expensive tea. It never has been. So it's a tea that you can really enjoy every day. That's the idea about this tea. It's something you can buy in bulk and you can hopefully enjoy for a while.
And the powder really went a long way, I say.
Yeah, when he asked for how much he needed, I was like, you're going to need more than that. I didn't think it was going to last, but you made all of these desserts with that one. Wow.
Yeah,
Economical.
I still have some left over.
Yeah.
And you can buy it from Kettl too.
I can't say that, but we do have hojicha, yeah. So, all right, real quick before we take a break for the next session, is there any other questions right now? Oh, we do. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much for all of this really great information. So I remember learning about cold brewing coffee and how cold brewing coffee produces a smoother coffee than hot. Is that the same for hojicha? And so that's the first question. And then the second question is, are there any particular types of hojicha that you would particularly recommend for that cold brew method? For example, do you think it brings out the flavors more for the first flush?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm accustomed to British teas in case you couldn't tell from my accent. So I was just curious about which teas are more particularly suited to bring out the flavors using the cold brew
That's a good
method.
question. Very good question. Yeah. So to answer the first part about, so when you brew tea, depending on the temperature, you get a spectrum of what comes out in the tea leaf. So for example, when you are evaluating tea in Japan, meaning when you're trying to find the faults in the tea, you use very hot water. The reason why is it pulls out everything inside, all the amino acids, all the catechins, all the caffeine, everything comes out. So the lower the temperature, you start to modify what you're pulling out of the tea plant, meaning flavor and aroma. So with cold brewing, you actually limit the amount of catechin and caffeine that you pull out, so you feel less bitterness. But to make up for that, you brew it for a longer period of time. So I heard, or you may have heard, I said I started it yesterday for 24 hours. So basically, you use length instead of heat to extract flavor. So you can play around with that. Another interesting way to do it is you can brew it hot and then pour it over ice. And you get maybe more aromatics that way, but brewing it with cold water, you might get more sweetness. And I definitely think playing around with first harvest versus something later, you'll notice the first harvest tends to be like a little bit more like round and rich, more umami, more amino acid, versus later harvest, which tends to be more caramelized and aromatic. So really, your curiosity can guide you on that. Just play around with it. But starting with what I like to do is do about 10 to 15 grams per liter of cold water. So 15 grams of tea leaf, 1 liter of water, 24 hours, and start there. Then you can play around with it. Was there one other quick question before we take our first break? Or more, if it's okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Hello.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I was wondering if hojicha had some type of ceremony associated with it, like maybe matcha, maybe not like that deep, but similar to matcha. Is there any kind of, rituals or ceremonies associated with it?
Yeah, so in terms of the use outside of kind of like the hospitality, it's more really the ritual, I think, from my understanding and my experience, of people drinking it together informally. So the way that there's sencha-do, where you brew sencha in a more sort of like rigorous, rule-based setting, or sado, where you're doing traditional Japanese tea ceremony, hojicha sort of exists as this really special style of Japanese tea that's really about getting together with people and drinking it and having time together, but informally versus a formal setting. So I could be wrong. There could be some, sects of tea practice that use it, but I've never experienced it, and I don't personally know of it being more served in a ceremonial setting. So it's definitely a more informal tea. Okay, was there one last question before we... Okay, over there.
Hi, my question was about the nutritional and health benefits of it compared to matcha. Obviously, the health craze with matcha. Just curious if hojicha, roasting it, helps us absorb it better or anything like that. And then second question to that is how preparation affects the nutrition. So like cold brew versus heated versus fermented, or some other form of use. So
that's a great question. So again, there is a big change in the components that are available in the tea after roasting. So roasting, when you take the tea leaf and you use high heat on it, it will, number one, lower the caffeine. So in terms of whether that's more nutritional or not, it's more about how your nervous system and caffeine mix. So some people feel like they enjoy hojicha because they can drink more of it and enjoy it, and they don't feel wiry. Where obviously drinking matcha, you're consuming that whole tea plant, so you're consuming all the caffeine in the plant. So from that perspective, a lot of folks who feel like, oh, I don't really drink caffeine, or I'm not comfortable drinking, high amounts of tea because it makes me feel anxious or I can't sleep, hojicha is a great tea as an alternative to that. It still has catechin, it still has polyphenols, it still has the qualities of like the antioxidant quality that you would find in green tea, but to be honest, by that roasting process, you are lowering that. So if you're looking for just, maximum, pulling the maximum amount of health benefits out of the tea plant, you would want to use something that's steamed and not roasted. But that being said, I think of the spectrum of health benefits, meaning I drink hojicha and sencha and hojicha, and I can enjoy them all. And I do think there is a serious health benefit to like relaxing and enjoying something that makes you feel calm, versus I drink sencha, like a lot of sencha, and every morning when I start, like 20 minutes after I drank it, I'm like, I'm ready to go. I have so many ideas. I'm like trying to get out the door to get to work. And then, an hour later, I'm like, wow, I drank a lot of sencha. Where hojicha is a much mellower start for me. So it really depends on how you use it. So.
I actually heard kukicha is like really good for digestion. You should have it in a meal.
So kukicha, again, we were talking about that earlier. The reason kukicha is considered, unique is, again, it's like the highway for nutrients in the plant. So a lot of nutrients move through it, and when you separate that from the leaf, and the roasting process is interesting because it affects the breakdown of those chemicals differently than the leaf. The leaf ends up being rolled, and the stem doesn't. The stem is separated out. So there are definitely, again, benefits, I think, to trying both. And that's why I'm of the ilk of always I drink stem tea and leaf tea. If you're really looking for a full spectrum, drink black tea, pu'er, white tea. It's all, the tea plant is amazing, and depending how it's processed will change that. And you may find one that works better for you. All right. So there will be a chance for more questions, but I just want to give a super heartfelt thank you to Chef Sean Considine and to Honey Lee, who was also here helping Chef plate. So let's give it up. Thank you, man. All right, we are going to take a short break, about 10 minutes, and then we're going to come back with session 2. So thank you guys all for being here.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our first break. I'd like to introduce you to our featured products for this break. We'll be introducing 2 brands and their teas. First, I would like to introduce the Koyo Orient Japan. Koyo Orient is Japan-based in the Kagoshima Prefecture area, one of Japan's most renowned tea-producing regions. Working closely with local partner farmers, they carefully select highly aromatic tea leaves. With a focus on green tea and hojicha, they produce a range of high-quality products, including powdered teas and tea bags, that highlight the unique appeal of Japanese tea. Now, the key here is that they work closely with local partner farmers. Usually, manufacturers work with the same farmers for generations, and the trust and the symbiosity that they create in that relationship is very important into producing quality tea. Now, their careful processing methods and strong commitment to quality deliver a rich and enjoyable tea experience. First, I would like to introduce the sencha, which comes in the leaf and the powder, which is right here. First, we have the sayamidori, which comes in the powder and also the tea. And then we have the yabukita in the powder and leaf form as well. So these are high quality sencha grown using organic farming methods. It is deeply steamed, resulting in a bold, well-balanced flavor with a harmonious combination of astringency, bitterness, and umami. Now, the queen of the teas, matcha. We have the organic blended matcha and the single origin matcha. Both the single origin matcha and the blended tea come from Kagoshima Prefecture. And the blended teas are carefully selected and blended from that area. And finally, the main tea that we'd like to introduce for this event is the hojicha, which reminds me of the kotatsu living room experiences with my grandmother. This hojicha powder is made from high quality, first harvest organic tea leaves sourced from Kinko town in Kagoshima Prefecture. It is unusual that they use first harvest organic tea for hojicha, but this one is especially delicious and of high quality. Thank you. And next, I would like to introduce the Matcha Factory. It's an Oakland, California-based organic matcha brand and company, inspired by an innovative model that combines organic tea cultivation in Japan with clean energy. The company is committed to achieving zero waste and sustainability through the production of high-quality organic matcha. By integrating the entire value chain from farm to cup, the matcha factory employs renewable energy and pesticide-free farming practices. Using tea as a bridge to connect cultures and communities, the company delivers premium organic matcha and other teas to audiences around the world. This is the hojicha powder. This hojicha powder is made from tea leaves grown in Shizuoka by the expert Mr. Kinegara. He's a pioneer of organic tea farming who has been cultivating tea without chemical fertilizer for over half a century. That's over 50 years. It features aromas of caramelized sugar with subtle woody notes and hints of dried fruit. Thank you. And the next is the Tsuyuhikari Sencha. The sencha is made exclusively from the Tsuyuhikari cultivar, a single varietal tea. The leaves are grown in Shizuoka by, again, Mr. Kinegara, the pioneer. And his experience really comes through in these quality and consistent flavors that he delivers. And Matcha Factory has been fortunate enough to work with him for quite some time. It offers a savory notes reminiscent of kombu and wakame seaweed with light astringency and a rich umami-forward flavor. And they have many other products such as the genmaicha and also, of course, their namesake, the matcha. And they all, thank you. And then I'd like to show the pouch here. And they all come in single servings for your convenience. So thank you very much. That's Matcha Factory from Oakland, California. Thank you.
That was an exciting first session. One more time, I want to thank Sean Considine and Honey Lee for being here with us today. That was a big honor. And I ate like 4 of those little opera cakes before we started, so it's starting to hit me. Okay, so second session, I want to spend some time for those of you who might work in hospitality professionally, talking a little bit about how tea can be a way to add a new dimension both to the restaurant, cafe, and really any type of hospitality, hotels as well. So when I started my company many years ago, one of the things that I wanted to do right away was to connect chefs with tea, because tea is something that is hard to put a label on your tea that says this is really great quality or this is the best in the world, but chefs understand quality. And for me, chefs were always a really important part of the story of Kettl, because they were these sort of pioneers doing these amazing things with new ingredients, and tea was really something that I was able to show them, or in some cases they already knew about, just supply to them good quality. But I still feel today that one of the most impressionable types of customers is one in a dining room where they're sitting, the whole world is coming out to them, fish from all over, vegetables, there's so many stories being told. And tea is a really compelling story that can be told in a way that rivals wine or whiskey or spirits, or not even rivals, but sits alongside of those. So what I'd like to talk a little bit about for those of you in hospitality is how you can use tea to tell a deeper story. So, of course, I know we have some guests here today that do pairings or that have non-alcoholic programs. And something about tea that's really unique is that it comes and you need to be a part of it. It's not something that you can pop the lid off and pour and you're done. It really requires an investment of time and energy to be a part of the creation. Even brewing a simple cup of tea, you might not believe this, but when I brew tea for people, I still feel a little anxious when I do it because I want it to be done properly. And every time you brew it, you can't take for granted, because sometimes if you're not paying attention, you're not going to give your guest that really wonderful experience. And that's something I think that's actually, it's a tricky part about tea, but it's also a great opportunity to be involved in it. So tea pairings, NA, tea makes amazing sense, right? Because you can serve it in all sorts of unique ways. Serve it, we talked about it earlier, in glassware, in ceramics. You can infuse it into things. One of my favorite things to do for people that are looking to make cocktails is you can take a neutral spirit and you can infuse right in the bottle hojicha or sencha, and you can make a really interesting distillation of tea that you can then go on to build other drinks with. Or you can, use a cold brew and you can build some type of mocktail with it. And it's not just a flavor. It's more than, tea isn't just, oh, that's a great flavor. It has umami. It has this character, this richness. The same way when you drink wine, you don't go, oh, that's a good grape flavor. It's not. It's more than a flavor. And tea is like that as well. It has, depending where the tea comes from and the style of tea, it has harmony. And I think that's the thing I love about tea is the harmonic element of it. So it can also be served along with food, both hot and cold, to enhance or to contrast the flavors on the plate. So at Kettl, we do a monthly dinner where we work with chefs to do tea pairing. And some people are like, tea pairing? Like, really? Like a whole meal with tea? But you can carbonate it. You can serve it, at different temperatures. Sometimes having cold food with very hot tea is a very interesting contrast. So it's really about using your creativity, and we've seen this on bars with mixologists. We've seen it with people who work in the dining room getting inspiration from the meal and saying, oh, wow, that's an interesting flavor that we're serving in that dish. What could complement that? So it's really about thinking creatively, and tea is a really strong creative partner. And then recommendations considering caffeine levels or health benefits, right? Like the idea of, hey, it's really cold out when people sit down in our cafe or restaurant. What if we had a little something for them when they got there, right? To start the meal, to make them feel like they're being welcomed in. And hospitality and tea are, whatever you're interested in, tea can go along with it. If it's hospitality, dining, design, art, the world of tea is really deep and very wide. So food and hospitality is a really easy way to bring those worlds together. Okay. So operational tips. So as I said, tea can have some operational complexity because it's not you pull the cork out and you pour it at the right temperature. You do have to participate with it, which is one reason, for example, that cold brewing, as I talked about earlier, is a really great way to do some of the work when you're not being stressed out by the operations of the restaurant or the dining room running. Or if you're in a cafe setting, you can batch brew things and have them ready to go. I think that's operationally a really smart thing to do, and it's also, it brings that cold brewing or that longer brewing process brings a deeper flavor profile to the customer. So staff training. So one thing I think it's really important about tea too is to remove this idea of like, okay, we have a tea list and this tea comes from here and this tea comes from there and blah, 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 blah. You really, to feel the inspiration of building a tea program, you want to get as much information as possible. And to me, the source of everything is the people who make it. So it's the same in wine. The most valuable wines are not necessarily where they come from well, they are, but not just where they come from and not just the grape they're made from, but by the person who makes it. And that's when you really get into understanding the energy and the depth and the creativity of the maker. So when we do trainings at Kettl with our clients, we don't just start by teaching them, okay, this tea leaf comes from here. We want to tell them about who made it, how it was made, what it was like that season. And that inspiration, learning about people and the stories behind them will always be captivating. We're human beings. We like stories about other people. So I always suggest when learning, or if you work with a tea purveyor, to have them tell you as much as you can, or as much as they can to you about where the teas come from and who makes them. And that, that will lead to flavor profile. That will lead to where and how you're going to use the tea in the service. And that gives I know the first few times that I had a really beautiful wine pairing, I remember leaving feeling inspired and probably drunk, but inspired too. But that feeling of like you give something to the guest that when they leave, they feel, wow, I was not expecting that. And I'm going to tell you straight up, tea is one of the ways that you can surprise guests more than any other. And the reason I believe why is everyone, if I went into anyone's house here, could I find tea in your house? Raise your hand if you have some type of tea in your house, right? Everyone knows what tea is. It's common. And when you have something that people know and is very common, you set them up to be surprised when you can reframe it for them. So when you show them something that they're like, oh my God, I didn't even think about that. Tea is one of those things that you can do that all the time, and guests will leave going like, wow, that was amazing. And that's the thing I want to leave you folks that work in hospitality with is, is searching and finding ways to bring that sense of discovery to the customer. All right? So regions, I want to talk a little bit about, I can't, in today's presentation, we're not going to go very deep into the areas of Japanese tea, but it is, there are different areas of production that focus on different flavors. So if you're in the south versus the north, or if you're in, even townships within the same prefecture, what's so cool about Japan is it has regional food culture, meaning soy sauce, 30 miles you go over here, the soy sauce is totally different. And this town has never had their soy sauce, and that town has never had their soy sauce. And it's amazing that that still exists in a world where you can order everything on Amazon. So what I love about sourcing tea in Japan is when you go and you drive over the mountain and you're like, oh my God, this is totally different. I'm 30 kilometers away from there. And they just continue to make things in a very special regional way. And I think that's one of the exciting things about learning about Japanese tea is like, you can never speak specifically. And I try to avoid that when you say like, okay, tea from Shizuoka tastes like this. Tastes like that in that town, and then you go somewhere slightly different and they're like, well, actually we do it a little bit different here. So it can be really exciting to learn those micro levels, but of course you don't all have to start at that level, but just learning about the regions and where different flavor profiles come from and sharing that with your customer. And tasting formats that focus on aroma is really important, because we talk a lot about taste, but a lot of what people are really attracted to with Japanese tea is that really fresh, rich aroma. So finding ways to enhance the tea where you can talk about that as well is very important. All right, so now we get on to my second guest. I want to invite to the stage Alan Jiang, who is the founder of 12 Matcha. I'm sure you all know 12 Matcha. How many people have stood in line at 12 Matcha? I've stood in that line. So I want to thank Alan for being here. We're going to talk a little bit about working in tea professionally, the state of tea today not just as a drink, but as a business. So Alan, maybe you can give us a quick little introduction of how you got started.
Sounds good, and thank you, Zach, for the introduction. Hi, everyone. My name's Alan, and I'm the founder of 12 Matcha. Started building 12 when I was still in school and college, and made the commitment and the dedication to pursue into the world of tea. Took me 4 years to be able to open up 12. Was finally able to open last March, and super excited to be a part of the journey with tea.
Nice. Wow. And you said you were in school when you started it?
Yes, I was in college.
Kids these days, man. That's crazy. Good for you. You still got a lot of energy. That's good. You're going to need it.
Fueled by matcha as well.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So how did you I'm curious, what was your story of how you picked tea or found tea, especially that early, to be able to, you said the word, I think, commit. How did you commit to it that early on? Was there something in your past, or you just found it? How did you get into it?
Right. I grew up in Hong Kong, traveled to Japan with my family on a yearly basis, and I think my exposure of tea is mainly one thing that I realized, that a lot of people think tea is a beverage, but no matter where you're from, whether it's in Japan or across Asia, tea is served much more than just a beverage, right? It's served as a way of bringing people together. And I believe that as an introvert, having those more intimate conversations through tea is what resonated with me the most, and it's a lot more feeling-based.
Oh, interesting.
Right, yeah.
That's a great point. And growing up in Hong Kong, was there, did you have an attraction to tea? I know Hong Kong has an incredible tea culture, but how did you find Japan as the window or the door that you wanted to travel through to get interested in tea versus, oh, I'm in Hong Kong, there's all this access to really great tea there?
Right. I, just like you, have a sweet tooth. I love eating desserts. And my first introduction to matcha was when I was 10 years old, traveled to Japan and had matcha parfait. The season of fresh fruits. think
Yeah.
that was one of the most, I think, memorable experiences because of the delicate flavor notes of the tea, as well as pairings with the fruit. It was always a delightful treat.
Yeah. Well, I think that brings a good point is, you know, specifically you're working with matcha now, and I think matcha has a huge audience. And one of the things I think that when we think about matcha, I kind of think of it in two categories, as the tea itself, but also as a flavor. And I think a lot of people are familiar with matcha flavor, but not as many people might be familiar with matcha in the story of the actual, the leaf and where it came from. So I feel like what I gather from you know, meeting you and being at 12 Matcha is that story was maybe more interesting to you as not just a flavor, but as kind of going deeper into the world. How did you find it easy to get into that world? Did you find any roadblocks along the way, or did you feel welcomed into it? And what's your journey? Where are you at now with that journey?
I'm still in the beginning of the journey, and the way that I look at it is the way I view tea. It's a gift from Mother Nature. It's born alive and unique, and all tea has its own gentle characteristics, right? And when I talked about my exposure to tea and how it's more feeling-based, I feel like when the way that I view it is just like how each tea has its own characteristics from each region, each year's harvest from the farmer, the town, and the people that took care of the tea. But so does we as humans. We drink tea with our own individual feelings, right? We all interpret tea differently, and that's the beauty of flavor. That's the beauty of tea, because that subjectivity, it makes us interpret the different flavors of our individual feelings, right? And I think the part of the journey when looking at 12 is I want to be able to embrace the unique aspect of tea being alive, and so does we as humans. And when we drink tea, I hope that people get to be able to interpret their own feelings and make their own personal connections with tea. And I think that is something that brings people together, and I want to be able to, through at 12 as well, designing the experience, highlight the philosophies, the stories, and the context, the people that it's behind the tea as well. And given that, hopefully through that, tea serves as another medium that connects people together and get people to form their own relationships.
That's a philosophy.
With tea.
That's amazing. Yeah. I always say that I feel like with tea, so much about how people have historically consumed it is almost this moment in their homes alone, where I feel like other forms of caffeine, you might find it out in the world, but still today I feel like people protect that time for tea before the day starts. They come together, you know, maybe with someone, maybe with their partner or by themselves. And I think that's still something, even as it gets bigger and grows and tea becomes a, quote, industry, that's something I hope people stay with, because that's how I got interested in it, was that moment of like, oh, I can't wait to get up and make whatever I'm going to make and drink it. And I still do it. I did it. It's funny, today I had to go to our store before I packed up all the stuff for this event. And I was sitting at our back bar, just like staring into space, having a cup of tea. And one of our staff walked in and didn't know I was in there and screamed because they didn't expect anybody to be in the shop. And I was so lost in my world. I was like, oh my God, sorry, I should have told you I was here. But I really look forward to that moment of, you know, just, it's different every day. Like you could drink the same tea every day, but somehow you get a different experience and a different emotion from it. So I totally agree with that. So what are your, like, as a professional in tea, building a career in tea, what do you hope to, you know, like continue to work on as you build from this cafe? I know you just launched your retail products. So not to say like, what are your plans, but like, what do you hope to continue or to start working on with the future of your company?
I feel like it's still staying focused on defining what's important to me, to the brand, and carving out and building its soul. I feel like building a brand is one of the most difficult things in the world because you have to be able to build long-term trust and consistency and relationship. And that's not being built in whether it's 4 years or 10 years. It takes time to be able to slowly build that. And I think this is the beginning of the journey. I hope through 12 as well, continue to be able to explore the complexities and the diversity of tea, highlighting the different people, different regions, and focusing on maintaining and protecting what's special, which is giving the respect to the product itself, but also at the same time, the same amount of respect to the process, putting the care into understanding the tea, understanding why it is alive, what unique characteristics it has. And just like you've said, I think one of the special things is each and every single day when I drink tea, you always interpret it a little bit differently. Each moment is unique, and I feel like that will only grow over time. And I hope people, through tea, try to be able to enjoy it, enjoy the fact that it's alive, it's unique, and also slowly through that interpreting the tea and building the connection, they also understand themselves a little bit better, try to be able to build a deeper connection with oneself.
That's a big ask, but yes, I hope so too. Okay, so we've talked a lot about sort of the philosophy and the art of tea. For my last question, for people who are working in tea, if there's one thing sort of on the business or operational side that you've learned about the tea business or a tea industry that you go, oh, I'd like to share something with other folks who might work in tea. Do you have anything that comes to mind more from like the nuts and bolts of running your business?
Great question. I mean, still trying to be able to figure out myself as well. But I think one thing that resonated with me deeply, and as you were saying, I think, is trying to be able to understand the tea. Don't be intimidated by it. There's so many ways to be able to enjoy, so many ways to prepare it. But before you jump into the operations, before trying to be able to optimize, I think spend the time understanding and building the connection with the purveyor, with the people behind the tea, understanding the characteristics. Then once you have that fundamental understanding and that knowledge, then build operations on top of that, right? Because I feel like if you were to look at the matcha market, even when we talk about matcha latte, right? It's much more of a contemporary way of enjoying, and there's so many ways to be able to prepare. But before you dive into it, understand the notes of the tea, right? That would determine the ratios of your milk or your ice or even the sugar, right? And whether if it's much more of a mizudashi way of enjoying it, right? Using colder water to be able to have highlighting the sweetness, or if you want to be able to use a hotter temperature to be able to bring forth the aroma. There's so many ways to be able to enjoy even just a single tea, but then only through building the relationship and connection and understanding it first, with whether the product, but also the people, and then building the operations above that, I feel like. Yeah.
Cool, good answer. All right, what I thought would be fun is we're gonna go through and make a hojicha latte for you. So this I thought would be interesting because it'll give you some hands-on on the way that we do it at Kettl. And I know I heard some rumblings that hojicha might be making an appearance at 12.
Yes, so I'm going to, thank you. I'm going to Japan.
Teed that up for you.
Yeah. Yes. Going to Japan next month as well, looking into the harvest. I think when we first launched 12, wanted to be able to stay, and even till this day, we only have 2 beverages on the menu.
God bless you, that's so smart.
Yeah. And
every time I see them, like, they only do 2 things. That was such a good idea.
Yeah. And essentially diving deep into hojicha this year. So we'll go to Japan, and hopefully we'll bring some exciting tea for everyone to share with everyone as well.
Exciting, great. Hojicha is on the rise. All right, so we're gonna go through the recipe that we use at Kettl to craft a hojicha latte. So you can see that we're using hojicha powder here. So this is pulverized. This is actually the leaves and a little bit of stem of hojicha that have been finely milled. So what this is gonna allow us to do is create a suspension. A suspension is basically the powder and the water mixed together. And this is really nice as an application to use as a latte versus, having to brew the tea and it becoming watery with water and, brewed tea. So we're gonna take what we use typically, and you guys can write this down, it's the way we make our lattes. We use 4 grams of hojicha powder, and we use 150 grams of milk or oat milk. What we use today, we used koji, which is a type of koji, fermented rice with oat milk. So this is an oat milk, non-cow's milk that we're using today. So we have this pre-measured here with our ice and our milk. So we'll
Let me
we've
see.
sifted this and scooped it into our, this is called a karakuchi, which is basically a bowl with a little spout on it. This is great because when we're pouring, we don't get any drips. So we're going to take 2 ounces or about 60, no, excuse me, a little less than that, about 50 cc's of hot water. We're going to put it over like that. There you go.
Thank you.
Gosh, that smells good. And we're using the same tools that we would use for matcha. So has anyone seen this before? The chasen, this is a bamboo whisk used for whisking matcha. And this bowl as well, this karakuchi, we use also for whisking matcha. So a thing that I always talk about that's important when you're whisking anything, matcha or hojicha, is to always use your non-dominant hand to support the ceramic. Because one thing that drives me nuts are TikTok videos where people are like this and they're not holding the bowl. And I just feel like if that bowl goes flying, it's out of respect to the person that made the bowl, let's put our hand on the bowl and hold on to it. So I use my hand, my non-dominant hand, I'm right-handed, and then we're going to whisk with this. Now, a couple tips for whisking. I see people that like get really close and try and get in there like that. You want to keep your body upright, and you want to get your fulcrum from your elbow here. So it's really hard to move if you're down like this. So the key is just bringing the elbow up and creating a point where you can get some movement, and then it's really kind of in the wrist like this. So another key is you want to use the entirety of the bowl. You don't want to make a little circle or stay right in the middle. You actually want to use as much of the, wow, high powered. I knew he was going to be good. So yeah, you want to make sure to use the entirety of the bowl and go from edge to edge. And what that does, it allows you to really make sure that you're creating a fine, you're pulling in enough air to create a fine foam. So in the beginning, you hear this? You hear that? At the end, I'm moving just across the top to work out any small bubbles. And it doesn't have to be like, hours of whisking, just, 15 seconds. Then we're just going to take it like this and pour it right over our milk and ice. And then that foam at the end there, that's important because that contains a lot of the aromatics, and it's also going to, as it settles into the drink, it'll create nice texture. All right. And that's it. Simple. So that's the iced hojicha latte. Should we try this? Cheers. Thank you, Alan. Oh, that's good. That is good. I find hojicha to be, it rivals. I mean, for me, like this is good. This is something
amazing.
that I want to drink all the time. What did you guys think of the latte? Did everyone enjoy? Nice.
Delicious.
Very good. Yeah. And we used our hojicha powder today this is from Kyoto Orient. This is their organic roasted green tea powder. So, very good. So, any questions for Alan or myself about anything? It can be about the industry or working in tea or a career or anything.
How are you? Thank you so much for having us. I come from the wine industry more so than food or tea. And in your travels to Japan, have you noticed that kind of like your distributors or the people you're working with, are they more bigger kind of institutions, or are you going kind of, small business, small tea makers over there? I'm just curious what you see.
So I'll answer first. One thing that Japanese tea, a big way that it's different is how the industry set up getting tea out of Japan. So there isn't a negociant, there isn't an exporter, importer. Really, we do it all ourselves. So we can work at the literal level of like, we buy tea from a guy in Nara that makes, like, no joke, like 10 kilos a year, and we just buy it all, to obviously for some things that we need a lot of, we'll work with larger suppliers. And for me, it was never about we only do X or Y. I want to work with the best people, and some have bigger companies, some have smaller companies, but being that there isn't such a strong laws of how you move, like in wine, right? Like how the license you have to move, wine from France to New York, and then where you can sell it, what state you can sell it in. Tea, we don't have that. So we can literally go from as small as one farm bring it to New York and distribute it, or we can work with larger as well. It really just depends on the quality of the product and the amount we need.
Yeah.
Al, did you?
Yeah, I think I resonate with that as well. It's mainly just building for us as well. We're like one store cafe, right? So essentially just working with one partner closely for the past now 5 years on really bringing forth not just their product, but understanding. That's why I think working closely with the purveyors or the people behind works is then you really get to understand their philosophies, the way they view tea and their stories, so that you would be able to much more through that deeper understanding bring forth that. And hence for us as well wanted to be able to focus on building those not that many, but small but tight relationships with our partners.
Hi, Ellen. Fellow Cornellian here. Very
go Big Red.
fascinated. Very fascinated by your journey, and I was one of the people who stood in line at the cafe too. I could never got in, but it's okay. I think my question is: there are so many matcha cafes, especially in New York City. So, what do you think makes 12 so special?
The way that I feel like each cafe has its own unique aspect. I think for 12, one thing, as you can see through the way that I look at tea as well, I feel like I want to be able to build a cafe experience where it highlights the philosophies and stories and centuries of knowledge that's being put behind the tea. But also through the experience, you see it's a lot more human connection based, right? The moment you place your order at 12, you each and every single of the guests would be called to their station, and the baristas will have an eye-level conversation through tea, right? And I think one thing that I was thinking potentially of why people do enjoy that, is especially after COVID. At the end of the day, we're humans, and Zach talks about it as well. We want to be able to be connected. We want to be able to have much more of an experience, want to have the conversations, right? And I think when the guests come to 12, we want to be able to make sure that, yes, you're enjoying the tea, but truly also what's behind the tea, the DNA is, it brings people together, right? And I think the trend that we're seeing is that modern day guests want to be able to be connected in a much more organic and authentic way. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why the guests do enjoy. Yeah.
I hope I can enjoy it soon.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Yep.
Thank you so much for sharing so much about your tea experiences. I was really curious, as both of you, are very invested in tea and the quality of the tea. Just as with wine and different teas, there's going to be variations in taste across seasons, across years. How do you ensure that there's like a standardization across different years or different seasons for your products? Do you sort of try and mix the flavors to match, the one that you've identified sells best for your audience? Or do you sort of roll with it and say, okay, so this season's tea is going to be more floral than last season's tea. We're going to accept that and introduce that as just part of the variation of tea.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think what we at Kettl look for is what reflects the producer's intention. So we have two categories. We have teas that are consistent all year, and that typically comes from something called gogumi, which is blending Japan. So the teas are specifically crafted like a cuvée in wine, where you're looking for consistency, you're looking for, seasonality to be important, but not the defining characteristic of it. Like the 2024s were way different than the 2025s. But there are producers, and it tends to be smaller producers, single cultivar, unblended teas that have a big contrast. And we love that. That just like, in wine, you have, single producers of wine that have a certain characteristic, and each year it changes depending on the weather. And for us to delete that is doesn't make sense. We want to, and when we decide we work with a producer, we buy every year. So we really, and to the point where some of our producers are like, please, you don't need to buy it this year. We just don't think it. And we find a way to tell that story, and we adjust accordingly. But it is obviously realistic in some instances that we'll need consistency. So we work with people who blend for consistency.
And to build on top of that as well, I feel like blending is, a lot of people think that's just simply mixing, right? But from a tea producer and artisanal perspective as well, they always talk about, again, the tea being alive. And in order to be able to blend, it's not just mixing. Mixing will result in a chaotic product. It would not result in the harmony and then as well as the consistency that people are looking for. But truly, blending is paying respect and deeper understanding of what that flavor is. Understanding before you blend them, and then having that appreciation of whether that year's harvest for that purpose, whether it goes into a single cultivar where you have a lot more variation between each year's harvest, or if you want the consistency, it doesn't mean that blending would be just a mixing process of, okay, this is the region and we put the tea there. But it's still showing a tremendous amount of respect and care towards the understanding of that year's harvest, and then putting it together as a consistent and harmonious product.
So real quick, I'm gonna answer a couple questions that came in online. First question is, any other countries other than Japan produce Japanese green tea, matcha, and hojicha? There are other countries that produce products like green tea, powdered tea, and roasted tea. They are different than, the DNA of hojicha from Japan, because you have specific cultivars. So it's like what grapes do well in Italy and what grapes do well in France. Yes, you can have a red wine from both, but they're different, and they always will be. So Japan has a unique quality, and it also isn't just from the land and from the cultivar and from the weather. It's the mind of Japanese producers is different than anywhere else in the world. The craftsmanship, it's just a different approach, so things are going to be different there. So you can certainly buy, now I know that there's matcha powder or powdered green tea that's similar to matcha being made all over the world. And I think the quality will continue to increase there. But if you're looking for matcha, hojicha, or sencha, there's no reason not to start in Japan, and then enjoy the teas that are produced outside of Japan as well, but understand they're going to be different. The other one was, where can you get hojicha powder? Can you grind it yourself? I don't recommend grinding it yourself unless you're going to have it like in your teeth if you do. So the good news is hojicha powder has become much easier to find in recent years. Obviously, quality grades, vary depending on where you get it from. One of the tricky parts about hojicha is depending on how it's ground, the product itself tencha is what you use to make matcha, is very soft and has a lot of surface area. So when you mill it, it can be very fine. Depending on hojicha, it can sometimes be gritty. So you want to make sure you're buying it from someone who understands how to mill it. Last one. What books or courses do you recommend for someone to learn about Japanese tea? Okay, this isn't self-promotional, but I do have a book called... I'm just telling you this because I wrote the book because I couldn't find a book in English at the time that I thought told a long story of tea. So I have a book called Stories of Japanese Tea that you can find in bookstores that is a little bit about my journey, but it also breaks down the different regions, the different styles of tea, and I also do a lot of interviews with producers. Do you have a book on tea that you like?
I would say look into a very classic is Understanding the Stories of Senryu Riku and his philosophies of tea. Yeah. I think that part, and the story is very interesting, and also essentially you understand how the birth of Japanese matcha then going to the different schools of tea as well. Yeah, definitely. I think that philosophically...
yeah. I think if you're looking for something more like on the technical side of how tea is made, maybe Stories of Japanese Tea, but certainly the philosophy of tea, there's a lot of good books as well. Great. Do we have time for... No? Okay. Just ask me after. Yeah. Or on the break. I'll answer it on the break. Okay. We're taking a break now? Okay, we're taking a short break, and then we're going to come back with the third and final installation. This is amazing. We usually don't have this many questions. Yeah. So thank you. Thank you, man. Thank you. Yeah, great job. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much. We are at our second intermission, and I'd like to introduce to you our two other featured products for this event. First one is Isso. Isso Corporation is a Tokyo-based lifestyle and Japanese tea brand. Isso Tea embodies the idea of contemporary organic Japanese tea. They handpick the finest leaves from a limited local production accounting for only a few percent of Japan's total tea leaf harvest. In addition to the cultivation method, the packaging prioritizes eco-friendly materials, melding Japan's time-honored wisdom of coexisting with nature, superior craftsmanship, and the relentless pursuit of aesthetic beauty. The goal is to introduce a contemporary concept of Japanese tea to a global audience. The first two products, of course, is the Isso ceremonial grade matcha organic tea in the tin and also the pouch. Now, Isso ceremonial grade matcha features an elegant aroma, rich umami and body, and a deep green color with smooth, creamy foam. Ceremonial grade implies that it is the finest matcha that you can get. Made from carefully shade-grown organic tea leaves and meticulously stone-ground, this exceptional matcha, among the highest quality in Japan, can be enjoyed whisked straight or as a luxurious latte base. So the next product is the Genmaicha. This includes a rice element to this. So the Isso Genmaicha blends aromatic, organically grown Hinohikari rice from Kumamoto with organic first harvest green tea from Kyushu. Kyushu is the western island. Of course, Kumamoto is within Kyushu. And carefully roasted to bring out its toasty aroma and gentle sweetness. The rice really does add a wonderful element to the tea, and there's a wonderful combination. It's expertly blended by tea masters. It offers a clean, refreshing taste with a smooth, lingering finish. Okay, and the next product we would like to bring to your attention is the Isso Signature Sencha Organic Green Tea. This is the loose leaf pouch version. So the Signature Sencha is crafted from exceptionally high quality leaves, carefully selected from the small percentage of organic tea produced in Japan. It's a very small amount that meets this level of quality. So expertly blended with skilled tea masters to achieve harmony and umami, sweetness, aroma, a beautiful color, and is a timeless classic enjoyed by both seasoned tea lovers and those new to Japanese tea. It is truly one of the best senchas out there. This also produces other products such as the black bean hojicha, which is the black tea is lovely, and also the Yutaka Midori sencha and the lemongrass green tea, which are all lovely combos. And then I am excited to introduce to you this lovely new brand, Heyday Tokyo. It was established in New York recently in October 2024. It developed the Ali Beauty Protein, a protein powder designed to support beauty and wellness in everyday life. Of course, it incorporates the health benefits of matcha, and this company brings Japanese-inspired products and lifestyle concepts to the US and global markets. So it's more than just a protein for muscle. This Japanese-born, all-in-one daily wellness and beauty ritual. Each serving provides 21 grams of protein, along with 10 vitamins, 4 minerals, collagen, probiotics, and MCT oil. It delivers approximately 1/3 of the essential nutrients needed for daily health in a single cup. It's made with authentic matcha sourced from Kagoshima. It offers a rich, deep, and naturally refined matcha flavor. Perfect for breakfast, after a workout, or as a satisfying alternative to snacks or juice. Oftentimes, matcha mixed into these protein drinks are of not the highest quality, but being from Kagoshima, quality is ensured throughout. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the break. We'll see you in a couple minutes.
Final session. You guys have all been awesome. I mean, I don't think we've ever had such an enthusiastic group before, and I couldn't even answer everyone's questions. So thank you guys for participating, and thanks again to Alan for that great conversation in the last session. So the final bit we're going to talk about here is kind of how to utilize hojicha in a setting of maybe tasting or pairing. And one of the things I'm very excited about is that this was a true story. So part of this event was helping to kind of feature Japanese tea, hojicha specifically this year, in interesting settings. So working with Jiang, working with some cafés to focus on, highlighting it. And I got a call from Dominique Ansel, like as we were brainstorming what we could do with hojicha. And they said, "Are you interested to do a hojicha cronut?" And I was like, is this a joke? Like, the timing of no, they didn't call me to do a matcha. They didn't call me to do, really it would probably only be hojicha or matcha. They said hojicha and I couldn't believe it. And Jessica from Dominique Ansel said she had been trying for 11 years to get hojicha featured as one of the flavors. Because they do a different cronut every single month, so 12 a year. You can compound that by 11 years. That's a lot of flavors, and hojicha never showed up. And it's a testament, I think, to hojicha has a following. So if you put it, people will go, "Oh, I know what that is." So I couldn't believe for the month of January, we were able to work with them to do this really exciting cronut, which, the cronut, it's like, is there a more famous dessert? I can't think of one. So very, very excited. I want to thank Dominique Ansel for partnering with us to do this. Unfortunately, I think now that it's February, it's no longer available, but we got them to make a special batch for you all today. So I hope you guys enjoy the cronut. Yeah. So what we're going to talk about today is I wanted to do in this last session a little comparative tasting to start. So you have two shot glasses. It looks like whiskey. From up here, you have two shot glasses of hojicha on the left and on the right. And I'm not going to tell you what they are first, but I just would like, if you wouldn't mind, maybe we could all take a sip together and maybe we could describe a little bit about what we taste. All right. I drank mine backwards. Hold on. That's one. Okay, so what flavors does anything jump out at you guys? Anything you want to share what you're tasting in that one on the left? What was it? Like a white tea? Okay, anything else? Everyone's shy, they don't want to say what they taste. Bitter. Bitter? Has bitterness? Okay. Floral? Earthiness? Very good, yeah. Okay, let's take the one on the right. Try that one. Okay, so even more bitter. You might have a sensitive taste for bitterness. More caffeine. Interesting. Okay, what else? Umami. Yes, perfect. Cool. Okay, so you guys want me to do the reveal? Yes. All right. So I'm going to taste it with you too and talk a little bit about what I'm tasting. So on your left is a traditional hojicha from a later harvest, deeper roasted from Uji. Uji is a very famous area of tea production outside Kyoto. So when I taste this, the ocean comes to mind. You get a strong, almost nori characteristic. If you're familiar with nori seaweed, this has something higher level of something called dimethyl sulfite in it. That is the same, literal same chemical when you open nori and you smell fresh green nori. That chemical is more highly present in that. I can taste that. So it has this sort of like feeling of the ocean, but then you get this kind of darker, more caramelized undertone. And you do get some of the higher, like you said, a little bit bitter. You get a little bit of astringency, but you don't get as much umami. That's the first thing I taste about this. And that's leading me to it being from a later harvest versus, guess what this one is? This is the kagabocha. So this is, or excuse me, the kukicha. This is made from, I would guess, probably first harvest stem, maybe second harvest, but you get much more of the umami. So when I taste this one, it's brighter all around. It's a stronger characteristic on your tongue too, which leads me to believe that it's coming from the first harvest where there is more catechin, there is more, plant component in it. And then to what Caleb said, it's got that rounder, richer umami. So for those of you who might not be familiar, umami is this idea. It's not just savoriness. Often people say it means savory. It's its roundness too. It's sort of like when sweetness and savoriness come together and create some kind of third flavor. I often think about umami brings out sweetness more in things. So when you add a little bit of salt, right, when you're cooking, it enhances other flavors. And umami in tea enhances the sweetness of the tea. So you get this kind of like richness. So I thought this was interesting because it can show you, even in these just two hojicha right here, that there are different worlds, there's different characteristics. And some of those characteristics are coming from the fact that this is stem and this is leaf, or this is first harvest and this is not. But also there's that regionality. So again, that oceanic quality of uji tea, that's very common. And it's just like tasting wine. If you were to taste a Pinot from California or a Pinot from Burgundy, like they're both Pinot Noir, but they're going to reflect all sorts of different things. It could reflect the season, could reflect the soil, and it could reflect how the grape, or in this case, the tea was processed. So that's something that I personally find really fun. And I also like to find things this way and say, you know what, I just realized by tasting this, I really like first harvest. Something about that umami is attractive to me. Maybe I should look for that when I shop for teas. Because the best thing you can do is the more you taste, the more confidence you have when you're shopping. Because right now, I know a lot of folks ask me, like, how do I shop? Where do I buy it? What do I look for? Really, until you spend some time just having experiences and going like, oh, I liked that one, you'll start to build what you're looking for. And then you can go out and find it versus, I don't know what I'm looking for. It's hard to give someone a good product if they don't know what they're looking for. So I really wanted to share that as an opportunity for you to kind of taste both of those next to each other. All right, so I want to talk to you about 4 key areas of Japanese tea and what to think about. And this can be used for professionals when you're pairing teas or you're creating menus, but also if you're just at home thinking about like, okay, I'm going to try this tea. How do I taste tea? A lot of people ask that, like, when I taste tea, like, what am I looking for? So number 1 is aroma. Aroma is maybe one of the largest factors when you're, quote, tasting a tea, is what does it smell like? And the good news is Japanese tea is highly aromatic because of that process I talked about earlier, the steaming process. That pulls out all sorts of aromatics that, as the tea's processed later, can really be a defining characteristic. So we look for things particularly with hojicha that are roasty, that might have some grassy notes. If you were to smell these next to each other, this tea is definitely grassier than this one. So grassiness is, it's a characteristic of Japanese tea, especially green tea. And then umami, you may get something that's almost like a saline, or if sometimes when you smell matcha, you smell something almost salty. That salinity, that usually comes from amino acids that are present in the tea. So that's aroma. We have taste. So it's funny when you think about your tongue is actually a lot less sensitive than your nose is. So we don't have that many characteristics on the tongue, right? We have sweet, we have bitter, we have sour, we have umami. We have, what I think about more is texture too. So when you're tasting a tea, is it thick? Is it light? Is it bright? Is it bitter? Does it, how does it make your tongue feel after you swallow it? So that's something that one thing I love about Japanese green tea is that it can be thick. It can have richness. It can almost sometimes be brothy, which again is the presence of amino acids. So that's something really to think about. When I taste these 2 teas, I feel this is definitely thicker on the palate than this one. Body, I guess that I was covering that a little bit, but like the richness, the thickness between teas is something really important. And with matcha, one of the things I think people are so attracted to is body, because it's whisked and you have the actual suspension of tea particles and water. When people drink it, they feel very satisfied by the fact that it's quite thick. But many other Japanese green teas have thicker qualities as well from the presence of the amino acid. And then how about the finish? And finish can mean a lot of things. It can mean the finish of the flavor, but it also, I think of finish as how you feel after you drink it. Sometimes I drink teas that immediately in my chest, I'm like, whoa, that's strong. Like you can feel the energy moving out, if it's got a lot of caffeine or, it's particularly, strong. Maybe a first harvest tea, but also how does it linger in your mouth? Like what, do you guys taste the tea sort of evolving at all after you drink it? Like it might spread out on your tongue, it might leave an aroma, right? So all of those things are important when considering. And I really try to move away from like, this is a good tea and this is a bad tea. There are certainly good and bad teas, no question about it. But I think a lot of times when people start tasting, they immediately feel like they need to be able to distinguish good and bad. And I don't think that's actually the right way to go. I don't think your first instinct should be, I got to learn what's good and what's bad. You need to learn what information the tea is giving you. And then you can learn later, okay, maybe, there are defects in tea. But the truth is, some people, there are certain things that may not be thought of by a Japanese tea producer as being great that you might end up liking. So it's really more important about being able to distinguish flavor and aroma. And then as you evolve in your journey, you can start to apply like, okay, that was not properly stored. I can tell that. Or that is, wasn't particularly well made in the factory. It doesn't look nice. It doesn't smell nice. But in the beginning, really, I would say, don't worry about being like, this is good and this is bad. And I know a lot about tea because I know that's the good one and that's the bad one. It's that ego of trying to figure that out in the beginning can kind of wreck progress. So just be like an open channel and try and taste and see what happens. So those are my little quick way that I like to get into tasting tea. All right, so we talked a little bit about this cronut. I guess I did this slide out of order, but what did you guys think of it? I think it's with Okinawa hojicha and Okinawa black sugar. They sourced the Yanagi hojicha and they infused it in the ganache. So this is something interesting. When we worked with them, we sent them powder and leaf, and they actually ended up using leaf, and what they did was they infused it into the milk base. So that's another way if you work in pastry that you can use the powder, but you can also infuse it almost the way that you would brew tea, but instead of using the water, you're using it right into the milk. Sorry, any feedback on it? I heard amazing. You guys like it? Yeah. Does the hojicha come through for you guys? Are you getting it? Yeah? Yeah? Yes, sometimes, depending on how you got cut, you might have got the one with the sprinkle on top. That's really good. Good. Well, it was an honor to get to work on that with them, so this is my cronut, I guess. So this kind of brings us to the end of today's presentation. I know there was a lot, and you guys really stuck with me. Thank you. That was 2 hours. It can be, I have a hard time sitting for 2 hours. But I really, it's a testament, I hope, to the fact that tea is interesting and compelling. So I hope everybody enjoyed it, learned something. You have a new appreciation for Japanese tea generally and maybe hojicha specifically. And can I share your story? So I just learned that one of our friends who has a cafe was like, guess what our most popular tea was in January? Yeah, and I was like, oh, if he says hojicha, I'm going to lose it. And it's hojicha. They're hojicha. Is it the latte? Yes. Yeah, and you call it a black matcha latte, right? So smart marketing. Okay, I'm writing that down. Matcha. But a testament to, this is unsolicited. This came to me on that last break. But seeing that hojicha is having not just an interest, but like a sustained interest is really cool. So I hope that you guys now notice it more or see it, or if you have a cafe or a restaurant, maybe consider putting it on the menu. So one thing I'd like to ask, because we would love to hear feedback, we have a small survey that you can aim your phone at this QR code right here, and we'll take a few minutes. If you wouldn't mind, there's also something on your table. And if you wouldn't mind taking a little bit of time, this will help us improve future presentations. It'll give valuable feedback to the Japan side that they can then use to tailor these in the future. So I would sincerely appreciate if you could do that. If you guys would like to share anything, it won't be so much of a Q&A, but if anyone would like to share some feedback about what you thought about some of the hojicha or about the cronut, it can be a little sharing, but any sharing? Who wants to share? Okay, great.
And my introduction to it was through ice cream.
Oh, okay, yeah,
This is
nice.
the very first time I ever had it, and I was like, these flavors are absolutely incredible. I need more of them every chance I get. My question to you is, what is the next hojicha?
Oh, man.
What is the next tea I'm going to happen upon?
Things do not last long, do they?
I'm going to be drinking hoji.
We're literally post-hojicha. Okay. I mean, I do think realistically, I do think hojicha is still at it's in its beginning stages in terms of people's awareness of it. So I agree with you. We do a hojicha soft serve that actually outsells our matcha soft serve. People love it. There's something about hojicha. Again, it reminds me in this way of like a nutty, almost like peanut buttery, like coffee-like quality that I think as if you were to look at it as what might be more similar to a flavor profile that people in the West are familiar with, hojicha may in a lot of ways be more reflective of like people's experience with taste versus matcha. So I do think that there's a lot of road for that. I'll talk to you after about what I think the next one is. I'm sticking to hojicha for the presentation. Cool. Any other things you guys wanted to share? Go ahead.
First of all, thank you so much for inviting me. I think for everybody here is a great opportunity, especially for me. I'm a coffee lover, so I'm like 4 to 6 cups of coffee a day.
Wow.
So as a New Year's resolution, I said I need something different. And I know the green tea has so many beneficial, things for your body, antioxidants. And you can name a lot of things. But today I decided to come. I really appreciate the opportunity because I was trying to go to change my lifestyle from coffee to tea. And I went to the supermarket and I didn't like the tea, the green tea. And I said, oh, there might be something wrong. Is it me or
it's not you
or the tea? So today I enjoy everything. As you can see,
wow,
there's
you
nothing.
Did a great job.
So thank you so much because now I have a different perspective.
Oh, that's great
And
to hear.
from now on, I'm going to try every day green
Good.
tea.
Drink as much as you can.
Hojicha.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially.
Can I also
Thank
say
you.
I love your hat.
Thank
it's a very
you.
cute hat.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank
It's
you.
been so informative. I'm an artist. I'm a ceramic and fine artist, and I've been exploring the world of tea my entire life. My ancestry is from Chile, where tea is also a very, very strong way of life, and that has kind of had me venture into Japan, into China, and all over the world, into coffee and teas. My question to you from an artist perspective, and again, thank you for bringing up how art and the respect of from the cup to the tools used in making the tea, matcha, and hojicha is something worth respecting. I heard you mention that earlier, but my question to you is, have you thought of any maybe non-traditional methods in the tools that you use and found success in it, or even just imagined how maybe we can evolve from something traditional to something maybe more modern, and how we consume it and whether or not that changes the flavor, something like using a copper mug or a ceramic to glassware, and how that affects your experience with the flavor with hojicha.
Yeah, it's a great, really great question. Thank you. So one of my passions is understanding tea in all its forms. And, in these settings, it's we get to talk less about it, but we're very passionate at Kettl about the intersection of design and ceramics and how they inform the evolution of tea, because tea isn't done evolving. It's not. And if you go to Japan, they're continuing to evolve and how things are not only created or enjoyed. There's a lot of the progressive side of tea is actually happening in the origin. But I do think that, I remember, this reminds me, a few years ago, Armando was there, we had a furniture show of tea tables made for enjoying tea with a really, Austin Voll, who's a wild man. He makes like furniture in the forest in Pennsylvania, and he brought in, I don't know how many pieces did he bring, like 8 or so. Yeah. And we really wanted to think about like how tools influence how you drink tea, because it's very, it does have a radical change in what ceramic you're using. My wife is a ceramicist, so I end up trying all of her experiments at home and what she's making for serving tea. And I think the key is it's about showing respect and reverence, but it doesn't mean that you just have to do the same thing over and over. So I think finding areas to push and do it with humility, not with, oh, I've invented the new best way to drink tea, or, oh, this thing is going to redefine. It's not about that. It's about incremental change and like, hey, here's an idea, or what if we tried this, and exploring. Because what I really am passionate about is how we, as wherever we're from Chile or from New York or from wherever, we can have tea culture that's built obviously on, the foundations of where it comes from as an origin, but like, what can we add to that story? And again, humility is the key. It's really about how you put your touch on it without trying to like take over. But, we've definitely had some really fun experiments with designers, with artists, ways that you can use tea leaves, for pigments, and how you can use tea in food and pairings and all sorts of things. So I think creativity should really drive, I think, the evolution of contemporary tea culture more than anything.
Have you found a difference with consuming it with something like glassware or?
Absolutely, yeah. So it's something, I think, if you look at the materials, water is very reactive with, it could be cast iron, could be glass. We talked about this just a second ago, porcelain versus earthenware, and it's really an unglazed versus glazed. I think that makes a big impact. So I spend a lot of time working with ceramicists in Japan, and we do lots of fun tastings where we'll make the same tea in multiple things, some unglazed, some glazed, different types of clay. And it can be subtle, it can be really impactful, it depends. Not everything is going to have a huge outcome, but absolutely. And I think that's a level of going deep that it can be really fun. And I don't know that people have explored it enough. So it does. It requires a lot of patience, though, to sit and to taste. So sounds like you like it. You should go down that road and see what you come up with. All right, so I think that takes us to the end of our presentation. So now, I was a little early before, if you could take some time to scan the QR code. Oh, and post too, yes, @JustTeaYourself. If you enjoyed this today, you can do a hashtag. So, thank you all so much for joining today's Japanese tea workshop. Whether you participated here in person or online, I truly appreciate you being with us and sharing this experience together. After this, we will move into the networking session. Please feel free to stay, connect with others, and continue enjoying the tea tasting. You have also received wonderful tea products from Japanese tea producers, especially for this event. You're welcome to enjoy them here during the networking time, and you may also take some of them home as gifts, and I think we have the bags over there. In addition, we are very happy to have two of the producers with us today, Matcha Factory and Heyday Tokyo. Please take this opportunity to speak with them, ask questions, and share your thoughts. It's a rare chance to communicate directly with the people behind the tea. And finally, before you leave, please don't forget to pick up your gift bag. Thank you again for being here today. I hope this workshop helped you feel a little closer to the world of Japanese tea. Please enjoy the rest of the networking session and have a wonderful day. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.